Welcome back to System Prompt. This is episode number 23, and we have a great one for you guys. My name is Val.
And I'm Peter, not to be confused with the other Peter that we have as a guest that Val's about to introduce.
Although I'm going to be playing around with that throughout the episode, so that one's
Oh,
going to be on me, guys. So we're happy to have Peter McCarroll with us, and we have a great one in store for you today. Today's guest is Peter McCarroll, and yeah, these are two Peters. Surprisingly enough, my middle name is Pierre, so we could really play around with that one if we want to. Peter is a chartered accountant in New Zealand and a CPA in Canada. Yeah, he started out at 18 in his father's accounting practice and did over a decade at Deloitte across 3 countries and has fueled accountants for over 16 years through a fully virtual cloud forum with staff in 4 countries doing bookkeeping, tax, and advisory. He was the first person from Zero ever named most valuable professional. We definitely got to talk about that. And he does AI training for accountants. He found the marketing fluff on one side and the developer docs on the other side, and he wanted to kind of build his own thing. The AI accountant and training implementation platform for CAS practices tested on his own firm is something that he is offering to a bunch of people, and he also ranks this week's AI's news for accountants every week, and he spends most of that time separating the noise from what really matters. Peter, welcome to System Prompt.
Thanks so much, Val. It's great to be here. The 3 Peters.
The 3 Peters, right? Now we're gonna have to raise a GoFundMe for Val's internet because it seems to be cutting out. So. Now you guys aren't gonna see that on your end because it's recording and it's gonna upload. But from our end, it looks actually pretty funny. So Peter, anything that we missed in the background?
It's killing me over here.
No, I think you got a pretty thorough bio there.
So when we had first connected, we had talked about, training happens and then nothing changes. So do you want to elaborate on what it is how you feel about that specifically?
Yeah, well, this is the perennial problem in any profession, right? We have an obligation to train our team, and work reverts back to what is the most normal or the most comfortable. And so one of the things I've been thinking about lately in the program that I run, we now tell our participants, don't train on the tools per se, train on the work. And this is one of the biggest shifts in applying AI within any business. We can go and train them how to use ChatGPT. We can train them how to use Claude, and nothing might change.
Yeah.
But if we show them, hey, here's a piece of work that you do, we've re-architected this, let's train you on this new process, you're actually now achieving both. You're training them on the tool, but you're also training them on how to actually do the work in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because especially, I have this conversation with a lot of different businesses. Enablement isn't just you switch the switch on, and then the expectation is that you're going to go and you're going to run with it. Especially if the business isn't even built to understand that your KPIs have suddenly altogether have changed and how you view them because of what AI actually brings to the table.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the things that we use to measure efficiency and performance can actually go against AI adoption. If in the accounting world, we measure the billable hour. I mean, this is the gold standard for everything we do. And that may no longer be the best way to determine efficiency. Yeah, we want our staff engaged. We want them doing client work. I don't call it billable work. I call it client work. So we want our staff doing client work and a high proportion of it. But this old idea of the billable hour is almost redundant now. Yeah. We've got to rethink what are the metrics that we run our businesses on. And they might not be the ones that we used 5 years ago. They probably aren't going to be those anymore.
No, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the work at Fuel Accountants.
Yeah, so as Val said in the bio, we're a full-service accounting firm. We do everything from bookkeeping through to advisory. We work primarily with owner-managed businesses, and we're Profit First certified, which means that we're really interested in how our clients build a profitable business and manage their cash flow. Our mission statement is to help entrepreneurs build profitable businesses. So yeah, we do tax returns, but I don't like doing a tax return for its own sake. It's something you do because you don't want to go to jail. It's not something you do because you want to understand how your business works. That's really what good accounting's about, helping you understand the finances of your business and making sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. So that's what we try and focus on.
All right, absolutely. So, how about is it possible for you to walk us through one real workflow over at Fuel, before, after, month end close, bank recs?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you. We're actually recreating a whole lot of stuff right now. There's been a whole shift in the tools that we use and what AI features are available. We're trying to break away from the sort of chat GPT prompt days and move more into the agentic world. When we started this process 2 years ago, that's all we had, right? Chat GPT and a custom GPT, and that's what we built. So we're re-architecting everything that we're doing to take more advantage of the new technologies, the new vendors, the new tools in those products. So one of the workflows that I'm tweaking at the moment is a year-end file review. One of the challenges of any accounting firm is that, especially at the senior level, the staff give you a file, you review the file, you find issues in the file, and you send the file back. And that whole loop can take a couple of weeks before it gets back to you and gets out to the client. So one of the things I've built is I've built a file review tool as a core skill, and we're just trying to move that into a more agentic platform so that the staff can run that before they send the file to me. Now, I'll tell you a secret. They don't like it because it raises more things than I would have raised if I'd run the file. And so it sends them back to clean up the work and make it actually higher quality. But the ultimate goal is not to save them time. The goal is to improve our quality and to save me time. And that's a trade-off that I think is worthwhile doing.
Absolutely. So, where exactly is the line between fully automated, AI assisted, and human review in the firm? What will you not automate?
Well, we'll never automate the relationship. Anyone in a professional service, the relationship is the most important part. Otherwise, you are a commodity. And so we want to make sure that in everything we do with AI, we are being human first, technology second. We pride ourselves on being a technology forward firm. One of our core values is to lead with technology. So we're not afraid of putting in new systems and new processes. But the thing we always want to watch out for is, are we using that as an excuse to not talk to our clients? And that's the threshold that I always look at. We still want live conversations with our clients. We still want to give our clients good advice. And the other thing is, an accountant, one thing we can never get rid of is the accountability. At the end of the day, we have to stand behind the numbers, even if AI did the work.
Yeah.
And that's super important. We can't automate away our responsibility. And I think as senior people in the firm and any business leader that gives advice, that's the piece that you still have to stand behind. So everything that goes to the client, you still got to review it. Still got to say, yep, that's appropriate.
Val, is there a party going on back there? Because we hear everything that's getting fed in through your mic right now. Thank you. Okay. And one of the things that I've seen and noticed that in a lot of different situations, I had I was talking to a commercial real estate person, and they wanted me to have me build them some tools, AI tools specifically. They wanted to find some off-market properties, and then they wanted AI to kind of reach out to these owners to see if they're willing to either lease or sell the property that they own. And and I'm sitting there going, your entire business is built on relationships. Is this really the first contact you want? You want it to be AI? You want that discussion to happen with a robot? Like, and they thought through it and I had to sit there and have that conversation about it. But you're absolutely right, especially when it comes to relationships. I feel soft skills is becoming more important, not less, especially in this AI world, right?
Absolutely more important. Yeah, I mean, the idea of a one person business, where everything is done on AI, that might work if all you're selling is a downloaded report or a software subscription. But if you're selling advice, if you're selling transformation of any kind, if you're selling a professional service, you've got to double down on the relationship now. It's even more important. because so much is being commoditized that people are first of all, people are just they just want human connection.
Yeah.
And so if you're offering something of any value, you have to build that connection now more than ever.
Absolutely. So, I love the A side stories, right? I love to see what works. I love to see, where people are accomplished and moving forward. But one of the things that I feel like we don't see enough is, what did we try and where did we fail at it, right? Because the B side, I feel like, absolutely matters because it shows the most amount of growth. So with Fuel Accountants, with your AI assistant, you want to tell us a story about where failure that has occurred?
Yeah, so we have a client. We were trying to build a revenue recognition model, and I'd written some instructions in Claude, and it seemed to be going just fine. And we went and rolled forward month after month after month, and we thought we were doing a really good job. And then we started to notice things were missing. And we went back and we found that it was dropping lines of this analysis. It wasn't hallucinating as much as, it wasn't making stuff up, but it was deciding which instructions it wanted to follow. And it literally cost us about 10 hours of work. We had to go back and recheck everything by hand. And, we didn't build enough verification steps along the way. We just assumed that because it told us it had done it right. Now, I will have to say, you remember there was a period of about 6 weeks where Claude was degrading?
Yeah.
Well, it was in that time period. So I won't totally blame Anthropic for it directly, but it's one of those lessons that you learn, that you can never assume that the agent follows your instructions 100%. And you can never assume it's not hallucinating, and you can never assume that it gets the math right, because that's one of its weakest elements, is math. And so, you've got to build in these checkpoints or these quality steps to say, hey, how this is how you tell that it's being done right. And in some cases, you need to do that in a different language model so that you don't have the bias of the first model, which created the work. And so that's probably the largest one. We spent days working on this thing and then had to, almost had to redo it because it just didn't hold water.
Gotcha. Yeah, one of the things that I find, especially when I'm working with large language models and I need it to do any sort of math, instead of letting it actually process the numbers, I tell it, generate a Python script, use Python as a calculator, instead of letting it actually try to process it. Is that something that you do in the accounting world? Because it's interesting, right? AI in the accounting world, and you were right that AI isn't really that great at numbers. So
yeah, so actually that's a really good point, and a lot of accountants don't quite realize this. Python, for those that don't know, is a programming language. It's a scripting language, very popular within the development community. Most accountants haven't heard of it. Some have, but most AI models have got a Python engine built in, and if it needs to do calculations, it can actually build a Python script, which takes it from being probabilistic to more deterministic. It's now running code, not running its thought process or its language model. And so sometimes I will do that when we're looking at something that's very numbers heavy, or where I want a high degree of accuracy and it's very routine. That's the other thing. It has to be routine. You could actually ask it, say, hey, build this as a Python script. And then it'll build the Python script. And now every time it executes, you're going to get the same results. Whereas with a general language model, you might not get the same results.
Absolutely. So tools wise, is Claude one of the tools that you use the most, or what other models do you use for this kind of work?
So my team have access to 3 models. We have access to the basic business version of Gemini, because we're a Google shop.
Okay.
We have Claude, we have ChatGPT accounts, and we have Claude accounts. We started out by giving everyone ChatGPT and Gemini. I would have to say that since earlier this year, we've moved way more to Claude. I'm a Claude power user. I only use ChatGPT now if I need to do an image.
Okay.
Yeah.
My own workflow, what I generally do is I'll use Claude, Fable, Opus 5 to kind of help me generate boilerplate, generate code, and then what I do is I'll pivot over to Codex to do verifications, which is an interesting workflow. So with client,
and I'd have to say there too, I'm not using. Well, actually, how do I put this? I'm not using ChatGPT or Codex because I think it's bad. It's just that I got so absorbed and into the co-work space, and
Yeah,
I'm so comfortable with it, and the results are just fantastic for me
yeah.
that I haven't felt the need to go and spend a lot of time in Codex. And everything I've heard about it, especially the Sol 6 models, is fantastic. And like
Yeah.
part of me is like, I want to go and spend some time working there to be able to do some comparisons. But the models are so close to each other that I don't really feel the need to be jumping around at this point.
Well, okay, interesting. Which Claude model do you use primarily right now?
So I use Fable if I'm doing writing work or research work.
Okay.
In many cases, I use Fable because it was the last thing I used, and it just gets the default. But I'll drop it down to Opus for many other tasks that don't need the power of Fable.
Okay.
And sometimes
Okay.
I'll even go lower than that.
Understood.
Yeah.
One of the things that I even see, and I like to contradict Anthropic, especially on the show. Now, being said, Val will tell you I'm a stern Anthropic user. I use Anthropic for almost everything, but I do have my own open source models that I leverage on my lab. I do leverage Codex, like I said before. Now, one of my biggest complaints with Anthropic right now is that they only have 50% Fable usage that are attached to, you can only use up to 50% of your model usage on Fable specifically. Now we have Kimi K3, we have GLM 5.3. Now integrating these into your workflows are obviously difficult, especially if you're chained, especially to not chained, but accustomed to the Anthropic workflow. But I feel like, especially nowadays, you have more a variety of models that you can use that are almost just as powerful. Would you ever consider using one of those models in your workflow?
Absolutely. As we are re-engineering things into more agentic styles, obviously token consumption is a big concern. And so, and especially if you're going to put these inside a wrapper or an app of some kind, you don't get, the $100 or the $200 a month subscription option anymore. You're now paying per token. So that is one of the things I haven't yet really dealt with. To do that, you need to be able to measure your token consumption on any particular task. So that's one of the next steps as we rewrite and re-architect some of our workflows and prompts into these new frameworks. I want to be able to evaluate them and say what's the cheapest I can get away with, and throwing in some open weights models or something on Open Router that's a lot cheaper than say using even Opus to achieve that is something I'm willing to consider, because I can't, the budget's not unlimited, and it's that old adage: use the cheapest method possible that gets the closest result you can tolerate. And so a lot of what we do doesn't need the highest model. I would reserve the highest models for either highly complex tasks that need really good rule following engines, something that needs really high creativity, or something that needs financial analysis. Everything else, I would drop it down to no more than Opus, maybe even an open weights model.
Gotcha. That was a really good, well-rounded answer. So, being that client financials are some of the most sensitive data out there, what can and can't client data touch, right? So where do these models touch? Are you comfortable enough to touch with everything? Are you comfortable enough with Anthropic's business model to where they are saying that nothing is being trained against any of your data?
Yeah. So my short answer is yes, I am. I'll put two boundaries around that. Number one, the shadow AI problem is real, and it's alive in accounting firms all over the world. And the first thing I tell everybody is you cannot use a personal AI engine of any kind if you're using firm or client data. It's a no-go, fireable offense kind of thing. Everything else from that point on there is contractual. And it's how much do you want to pay to escalate up the security chain? The two tests that most businesses need to think about is, number one, are we training the model? And if you've got any level of personal information or financial information, you never want to use anything that will train the model, and that needs to be contractual, so it won't do that. And then the other question is data retention, and there were some big moves recently about from OpenAI on this model, which I think is really good. Is how long is your data stored? and there are really good reasons to store your data. You know, if you log into ChatGPT and you want to find that prompt you ran last month and go back and catch up on it or restart it, you like the fact that it's remembering your data. But how long should it remember that data? Should it keep it for a month, for a year, for 5 years? You remember, in this business world, everything that you do is subpoenable. So you don't want data being retained for exorbitant amount of times, because that can put you at legal risk. And a prompt that someone runs and never finishes could be the thing that a lawyer picks up on and says, "Aha! Look, you should have known," and that would be terrible. So these are business risks. And you came back to that question in the intro to the question. You asked, "Do you trust Anthropic?" Well, I can only trust to the extent that the public trusts. And the general answer right now is these are highly commercially sensitive businesses whose lifeblood depends on them being able to manage this well.
Yeah.
I've got no problem uploading data into Google, my Google Drive. We have everything on Drive. Is Google Drive hackable? Of course it is. Could Google leak my data? Of course they could. If that happened, would I be in big trouble? Of course I would. But I don't think twice about it. Yeah. Most businesses don't think twice about putting data in their Google Drive or their Dropbox or their Microsoft storage systems. We are so used to trusting these large data storage companies, which is effectively what Anthropic also is. That we just now take that for granted. Now, remember, you can pay for higher levels of security. If you want true SOC 2 compliance on Anthropic, you've got to go to the enterprise plan. And that's an expensive decision. Yeah. And so every level you go to is going to cost you more. And what you have to work out is that risk versus reward. Okay? It's never an absolute. You'll never get absolute security or absolute certainty. It's just not possible. Even if you run it yourself, it's not possible. It's always about how much am I willing to spend and what risk am I willing to tolerate for that spend. And that's going to be a different equation for every business.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes to Anthropic specifically, I have when I'm consulting and they're trying to understand what's the difference between like a business plan and enterprise plan. I have to explain to them that the enterprise plan, especially if you're working in a 500, 1,000, 2,000 person company, it's a lot more granular controls than if you're just using the business plan. The business plan has controls, but it's a lot more globally. Yeah. Like it's going to be it's going to be global controls. It's not going to be as granular. But when you move to the enterprise plan, it's $20 a seat, and that doesn't even count any usage. Everything. No,
and then now you're on API rates. So yeah, it's an expensive decision.
Yeah, exactly. So that being said, has a client ever pushed back on AI touching their books?
No, I have not had anyone challenge what we're doing. One of the things is we're very vocal about how we work and what we do. And when I'm coaching with a client, if I've generated something with AI, I always say to them, "Hey, I ran this through AI, and here's the results." And then I'll do one of two things. I'll either say, "I haven't researched this, but you might find it helpful." So what I'm saying is, "Hey, AI generated this. Take and do what you want with it, but it's not from me." Or I'll say, "I have reviewed it, and I think it's good." So now I'm standing behind it, and I'm taking responsibility in exactly the same way as if I'd asked one of my team to write up a position paper, and now I want to present that to the client. I just treat Anthropic as one of my team.
And that's the viewpoint that not a lot of people are taking. And what we're seeing a lot of is the new coin phrase meat proxies, right? Because they're putting in the AI input, they're getting the AI output, but nothing is being reviewed, and they're just copy pasting it as their own. And a lot of people have issues that, and rightfully so, right? Because especially if you're it's not, "Oh well, the AI did it, it's not my fault." It's the AI did it, you're taking ownership over it, you gave it to me. Now, if you're doing that, obviously that's definitely the right way to look at it, and it's definitely the more responsible way of looking at it. So
the other thing that I like to do is I like to treat my Claude. My brother calls it my girlfriend. My wife is not happy with that. But I like to treat Claude as a dialogue partner.
Yeah.
So I speak to Claude. I've got a voice recognition app that transcribes what I say, and so I speak to Claude a lot. And so when I'm doing sort of this more deeper research, I'm often pushing back on its answers, and I'll ask it questions rather than just taking its answers. I'll ask it to justify, or go and double check any facts that it stated. I'm like, yeah, we might want to go back and double check those numbers you just gave me, because I've got this feeling that you might be off by something, and it'll go and do that, and it'll do the research. I was writing an article, I do this weekly roundup for accountants, and I was doing it on the weekend. I usually do it on a Saturday morning, and it came up with a statement, and I looked at the statement and I thought, I'm not sure that's right. Please go and check these 3 vendors and compare their pricing. And sure enough, every one of those 3 vendors was cheaper than the statement that it made. And so, this is for me, this is how you work with a good staff member. This is how you work with a good partner. You dialogue, you read, you critique, you push back. And it's the quality I get out of it is so much higher than anything I could write myself. And it's better than what it would write if I just let it do it alone. So I'm getting a better product both ways.
Absolutely. It's like the pair programming angle, right? It's better when you're pairing it together as opposed to just taking any individual output. So that being said, and saying that you use it that way, are you worried that AI is taking a role of some of this accounting work, and that as a result you're going to be not going to be hiring as much? Or where do you land in terms of is AI taking people's jobs, or is it allowing you to do more work, and that way each of your accountants can actually take on more?
The answer is yes to both questions. AI is definitely taking over work that used to be done by a human. In the accounting space, I would say it's not as well adopted, and even with the tools that are available, it's still not quite ready for prime time. It's getting there, but it's not quite there yet. In a year, absolutely, and it'll be doing most of the bookkeeping work. Okay, so anyone that's running a bookkeeping business should be worried, because the AI, the software tools, Xero, QuickBooks, the new breed of AI native tools, they're all over this. They are building products or updating their products to take the human out of the the first layer of decision making. Okay, that's a huge threat to a bookkeeping business. That's a large part of my business. So yes, it is going to take work that humans used to do. Now, I'm not worried about that in and of itself, not in my space. And this answer may be different depending on which industry your listeners are in. For my space, for accounting and booking, we have such a huge talent shortage that this might actually be a good thing in the short term. Because what it's going to do, we have a hard time recruiting good bookkeepers. And so if we can take those good bookkeepers and move them up into becoming more like a financial analyst, becoming more like a systems manager and a quality control reviewer, rather than a data entry clerk, which is not a good use of their brain, they may be happier. That we actually get more work done. And then we get to the second half of the second option you gave us, is now we can do more with less, or we can take on more work. Okay. And everyone says AI is going to close down a lot of businesses, and yeah, there may be some creative disruption, and some businesses may no longer be sustainable, but it's creating more businesses faster as well. So, as an accountant, this huge opportunity here. Even though AI is going to do a lot more of the work than the computers did in the past, it's going to free us up to do the things that we really should be doing, which is advising our clients on how to run a profitable business, rather than the compliance side of things and just pumping out tax returns, because that's the lowest value work we could do.
That's a great answer to that question, because a lot of people are worried. And one of the things that I say to a lot of people is it's never been a better time to create your own agency, to have your own agency, to push in. If you have the ambition and you have the follow through, consistency, and you're able to get no slammed in your face at 8 times, 10 times, 11, 15.
Yep.
And if you just keep going, now is the best time to actually do that. So you rank the week's AI news for accountants every week, right? What's your filter? What gets cut?
So the filter I put on it is what's relevant to a CAS practice. CAS means client accounting or client advisory services. So I will make decisions on, so I look at two spaces. I look at the AI tech world, and I look at the accounting industry announcements. And so I'm looking for that intersection of where is AI in these. So I don't need to talk about what the AI CPA is doing, unless it's AI related. Okay. And I don't need to talk about nuances in Kimi K3 unless there's a relevance to what accountants are doing. So I cut out all the stuff that isn't that intersection. And then the most valuable thing that I do is I translate the geeky stuff to the boring accountant's real world. And my goal is to tell them what this means, not just today, but what does this mean for your practice in the future? So I did talk about Kimi K3 when it came out, and open weights models and what they mean. And the reality is that most accounting firms are never going to touch them. No. Unless they buy a tool that does that for them. Yeah. Because they're going to be stuck in a co-work or a chat GPT environment where those tools just aren't going to be available to them.
Yeah, unless they have an actual bespoke solution created for them that happens to leverage that tool. Yeah,
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's something everyone in your space is excited about that you think is just like absolute noise?
Oh, that's a good question. What are we excited about that I think is just noise? I don't know. There's so much changing in our space right now, and I don't think any of it is pure noise. Can I reframe that?
Yeah, sure.
Let's go the negative side. What are the things that are preventing accountants from really understanding where the world is going?
Sure.
And this applies to any business industry. Okay. As accountants, we have been trained to believe that we are the ones that hold the skill and the knowledge. And the phrase that we use is called professional judgment. And a lot of times I post stuff on LinkedIn, and the responses that come back sometimes are, you're wrong. AI will never replace professional judgment. Okay. And I think that's noise, because professional judgment, my guess, and I actually got this from Nate Jones. I'm sure you know who Nate B. Jones is. He was talking about this one day, and I started to analyze it and translate it to the accounting world. 85% of what we call professional judgment is merely internalized rule following. and that's been the way it's been for centuries, and that's totally fine. The tax code is complicated, accounting can be complicated, even how to use the software can be complicated, and we do it really, really well. And how do we do that? We've just done it so many times, it's either mechanical memory or we've just internalized those rules. It's why I can look at a balance sheet and go, there's a problem, and you look at a balance sheet and you go, what are these numbers? Okay? Because I've just got all this experience, and I look at a number and I go, there's a dead fish. One of the sayings we have in our firm is that dead bodies get buried on the balance sheet. That's where things go to hide and die and rot. And so I can look at a balance sheet and I can go, something's funny here. This is not right. And my staff look at me like I'm this magical guru, that I'm a wizard. And it's like, no, I've just got more years of looking at numbers, and my internal rules engine says that doesn't make sense. Something's fishy. Okay. Well, here's the problem. AI is really good at understanding rules, applying rules, and following rules. It's really good. And so if 85% of what we do is because we've just had years of experience and AI can recreate that in seconds, professional judgment is no longer the moat that we think it is. And that's a huge challenge. Yeah. The other most common answer that people or response people will give is, but the tax code changes so often, AI can never keep up. And I'm like, well, actually, I think it can keep up better than you can. In fact, now I'm going to AI to make sure that my thinking is straight on something that's new, because I can't think through all the consequences of something that's still fresh. But AI can. And sure, does it get things wrong? Yeah, that's where my own knowledge and experience comes in to go, yeah, I'm not quite sure you've hit the nail on the head with this one, and I'll dig further until we get the right answer. So someone without that experience would struggle with that. They just take the answer at face value and probably have it wrong. But AI does a lot better at absorbing new things and applying new things than we do as humans. So neither of those two responses, they're both noise. They're both what I call the ostrich approach, which is I put my head in my sand and I play with my eggs, thinking that I'm immune, or my industry is immune from this wave of change that's happening. And so I think we see this in a lot of businesses. Oh, my business is different, or my business is very hands-on. AI is not going to help me. It's like, okay, it might not help you when you're doing the work, but it could help you to plan the work. It could help you to problem solve the work. It could help you to make your back office more efficient. It could help you with your sales and marketing. There's a lot of things that could help you with customer retention. There's a lot of things it could do that's not just I'm banging nails into a piece of wood. It's a lot of spaces in every business where AI can be useful, and those approaches of, well, it can't help me because ... Most of those fall away very quickly.
Yeah. And I like what you did there, because you showed that domain knowledge is still needed, but AI is still going to be able to let you work that much faster when you have that domain knowledge, because you can actually better judge what the output and make sure the output is correct, or at least correct looking.
Absolutely.
Much better than somebody who's not.
I do a little bit of cross-border consulting. I'm from New Zealand. I live in Canada, so I do a little bit of Canada, New Zealand cross-border consulting for tax. And so I frequently have these calls with new customers who are moving between the two countries, and they want someone that knows both ends. And that's one of the things I do as an accountant. And it's not unusual that I get a situation I've never seen before, and it's like, that's interesting. Let me research that. Now, if I had to go back and find the legislation and look for case examples and search the government websites and do all of that on the old style Google, well, that would have been a 3 or a 4 hour exercise. Well, now, often I'll even do this on the call. I'll just jump over to Claude, I'll give it the brief, and I'll leave it running. And by the end of the call, I can look at it and go, right, so this is what Claude's told me, blah, blah, blah. I don't see any problems with that, but what I'll do is I'll review it and I'll get back to you. And so now it's taken something that would have taken 3 or 4 hours and compressed it into what in my real time was actually just minutes, because it was working in the background while I was talking. And now I can just go and review that in 20 minutes and be confident that we've got a good answer.
Are you ever concerned about it hallucinating answers? Of
course, absolutely. And so again, that's where the professional judgment really does come in. And where I will read something and if it hasn't given me enough citation, I will push on that. Hang on. Am I worried about hallucination? Absolutely. And that's where professional judgment comes in, because if you don't know what good looks like, everything will be good. And that's probably the biggest challenge in AI. And it's not about hallucination. It's about, is this good for my client? Is this good in this context? The answer might be technically correct, but still inappropriate. And that's the one area that AI isn't very good at yet. And so we talk a lot about context and context engineering. That's one of the new fads. And this is super important, that when you're briefing AI, you're giving it enough information to be able to understand how you want to use this information. Because in my world, every client scenario is different. And so what works for client A may not work for client B because of these 3 facts. So one of the things that we teach in our practice transformation program is building what we call a client context document. It's a brief for the AI about this client. what they do, what their issues are, what's important to the client, what their filing obligations are. What do their business cycles look like? March is always the slow month. And so don't tell me that revenue is down in March unless you see something really significant that's outside of the trend. And we have our participants in our program run a query in their LLM of choice without a client context document. And we give it the financial data, and they run a query, and they get a result, and they all go, yeah, it's good. And then we have them build a client context document, feed that, and now run the same query with the same data plus the client context document. And it's one of these jaw-dropping moments where they suddenly realize, oh, wow, this result is so much better than the last one, because now it knew the background and the framework for this client, and the answers it gave me were no longer generic, but customized to this client. And it's just one of those light bulb moments that everybody goes through in our program, because they realize that, man, it's not about the prompt in and of itself. It was exactly the same prompt. It was about the background data we gave it that made all the difference.
Yeah. I like to tell people a lot of the time, it's like the AI doesn't really understand the input or the output. But what you have to also understand on top of that, there's no urgency unless you actually define all of these things and all of these characteristics. And without those definitions, what you're going to get is very general. Like if you were, and I like to use the example of if you work at a fire department and you have a garbage can on fire versus a house is on fire, the AI doesn't care to distinguish between the two unless you tell it to distinguish between the two. All right, so Pete, one last question before we close here. One thing a firm owner should start this week and one thing they should stop.
Okay, so let's talking accounting firm owners. One thing they should start this week is they should be looking at what will AI do to their client base and their revenue a year from now. This is the fundamental thing that we do in the practice transformation program, because if you don't know what problems you're trying to solve, no solution will help you. And you've got to understand, what is this going to do to my business model and my client base, to know what tools and strategies we want to implement to do that. So that's the first thing I think any accounting practice should do. And the second thing is really get serious about AI. It's not something that if you don't do it today, your business will close tomorrow. But I'm convinced that we've got maybe 2 busy seasons left. And for an accountant in North America, a busy season is December through April. Okay, we've got 2 busy seasons left. Before the business that we run will be almost unrecognizable. And so this is the time to start. Get into AI, start training the team, start looking at workflows, start looking at new tools to buy, understand what problem you want to solve, and then take action on it, because you've got 18 months. What should you not do? Well, I think it's the inverse of what I just said. You shouldn't put your head in the sand and pretend that this doesn't apply to me. And I'd say this to any business owner, regardless of what industry they're in, because it's going to affect all of us. Some positive, some negative, some neutral, but it's going to affect us all somehow. And our challenge is to make sure that we understand our industry and our market, how AI is going to help us, what the challenges might be, and then be strategic about how do we adapt our business. I use the word transform. How do we transform our business? Because if all we do is we bolt AI onto the edge of our business, we buy a tool, we train our staff on how to write a prompt, that's not going to transform our business. And if you've got some form of existential threat that AI could put, as accountants do, on your clients and your business, tinkering isn't going to change it. A new piece of software won't change that. You've got to really transform how you work as a business and rebuild it so that you will survive and thrive in that new environment.
Yeah, as I regularly say, it's a process problem. It's not an AI problem.
Yeah, I talk with our practice transformation program. The way I describe it is it's a leadership program, not a technology program. It's all about technology, of course, but it's about leadership. It's about positioning. It's about decision making. I'm not teaching you how to use Claude in this program. I'm teaching you how to change your firm.
Yeah.
And along the way, you'll probably touch Claude or ChatGPT, but that's not my goal. My goal is to help you rebuild your practice, not just train you on how to use a tool.
All right. So there's one question that I like to close on, and I know that I said I was closing there, but really, this is what's one question you wish that people on podcasts ask you, but they generally don't?
That's one question. Keeping this to the accounting space, how will accounting be different 5 years from now? I talk a lot about the rear view mirror, and accountants have historically been the owner of the rear view mirror. We're doing last year's tax returns. We're giving you last year's financial statements. We're giving you last quarter's reports, or even last month's reports. But it's always last something. It's in the past. And we're the king of in the past. Sales tax returns are for a period that ended last month. They're never for next month. They're always for last month. So accountants are the king of the rear view mirror. Business is changing, and AI is enabling and speeding things up. And AI is moving us to the point where, from a financial and accounting perspective, we should be thinking about the dashboard, not the rearview mirror, real time or 1 day old data. What does your dashboard do on your car? It tells you how fast you're going. It tells you how much gas you've got left in the tank. It tells you if there's a problem with your engines. Okay. It's giving you a status update on what's happening with your business right now. And my feeling is that by early next year, dashboard-based accounting will only be viable for older businesses that are in a wind-down phase. Anyone that's looking to grow a business needs to be at the dashboard level, real-time accounting, bookkeeping done within a day. A lot of accountants struggle with that. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to become the co-pilot and the windshield. And I always add with a heads-up GPS. Because what's important is the future, not the past. Past is important. We've got to get that. We've got to understand that. We've got to file the returns. I'm not saying this stuff goes away. It's still super important, but it's not the value that we offer a business owner. And so as that dashboard, or sorry, as that windscreen or windshield view with the heads-up display, we need to be helping our clients understand our destination, the route we're going to take to get there, where the road workers and traffic is really backed up that we might want to detour around, maybe where the cops like to hide up around the corner so we don't get caught speeding. Okay, that's the real value in a business advisory relationship, is being that co-pilot with the windshield and the heads-up display. That's how accounting is changing, and too many accountants still don't believe me on that, but it's happening.
Peter, you've been a fantastic guest. I feel like if we go any longer, we're at risk of people not actually watching the entire thing, as attention spans have decreased.
I don't want to bore them to death.
Substantially. Right. We do pretty good, but we get to a point where we see the drama, we're like, all right, 50 minutes. All right, we got to get off because nobody's watching after 50 minutes. But you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have to do a repeat because I would love to see how accounting is doing 6 months, a year from now, and then you can give us the updates on exactly what's going on as a domain expert.
Yep, sounds perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 23.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.